Today we meet Kyle, a young man who loves going out with his friends and attending festivals. Now, just a couple of years ago, Kyle started to lose his voice and complained of a sore throat, but that would be just the beginning.
He was into his gaming. He's quite a socially introverted person, but he's very loving. He's a big giant teddy bear is what we kind of call him as a family. It was any kind of typical family brother-sister relationship, but I think it grew a lot more because I was pregnant, heavily pregnant at the time, and he was going to be an uncle. So that kind of brought us all together more because we were bringing something into the world, and he was going to be an uncle, I was going to be a mum, and yeah.
The striking thing with Carl is his age. It's very unusual for us to see head and neck patients of that age. So here what we do is we have a stratification where we put them into high risk and low risk patients. And because of how young he was, 29 at the time, he went into a low risk group. So we have a virtual pathway where our nurse actually does the endoscopy, records that, and then it gets sent over digitally and we review that. And I'll do maybe 10 to 15 of these in one go, and the vast majority of them are normal because they're low risk patients, but then this one pops out. You look at this image and you can clearly see there's an abnormality there. And then I'm surprised to see, I look at Carl's age and you kind of have to double take of that. And we get him in immediately, can tell by hearing his voice that there's a problem. And that was his main issue. You know, his voice was hoarse, the presenting symptoms where I've been to a gig singing, you'd think nothing of it, we've all been there. Yeah, and as soon as I looked in with the camera and saw that picture again, I knew that we had to get him biopsied, scanned. Yeah, and then it kind of went on from there.
Kyle was diagnosed with cancer at just the age of 29. And whilst he was coming to terms with his diagnosis, things would take a turn for the worst.
So with me, it got worse pretty rapidly. So at first it was like lots of scans and stuff like that, preparing, shaving the beard, which was horrendous. Because before this, I had a big beard down to my chest, like full beard.
Did your other half want you to keep the beard?
Like, that was probably the worst news. Like in the first appointment was, I was going to lose the beard. And then during all those scans and stuff, it was a few weeks before I was meant to start radio and chemo, and they were like, no, we can't do radio and chemo now. Like, it was very, don't get you coming in for an appointment in the next couple of days kind of thing. And then being told it's spread, it's now covering both sides, it's breaking through the cartilage. More like, oh. And this is within weeks of the diagnosis appointment. So it was very quick, like, okay, and then there was them going, surgery's the only option. So that was a bit gut punch, like it. Because I thought I was not getting away with it, but it was better come out. The other side, 95% still the same. Then I had to adjust.
The worst. The mortality of it, the fact that he wasn't going to be here. Obviously, like I said, like the biggest thing for me was my daughter wasn't going to have an uncle and that kind of stuff. So it's the unknown, isn't it? You just don't know what's going to happen, and I don't think any kind of knowledge or experience or anything can make that any easier. I think the unknown is scary to everybody, and you never expect it to be your family member or your kind of you be in that situation. So yeah, it's terrifying. There is nothing that can change my mind with regards to Mr. George, like the trust, the confidence that he kind of gives out. Like, even though it was a scary time, the fact that it was him and he was the one that was doing the kind of the surgery and giving us the news, was really reassuring. The reality of it is if it was the old kind of way of doing things, Kyle wouldn't have even been seen. He would have been put on a waiting list, and he would have just been, because of his age, and he's on paper he looks like a typical 30-year-old guy. There's nothing else to it. But the fact that they were experimenting with this new technology that he got diagnosed with, which then flagged the cancer initially, if that wasn't used, he wouldn't be here now.
After we do the operation, we'll have reconstructed the swallowing tube. So you basically take one complex mixed two tubes for swallowing and breathing, separate them out. The cancer was on the kind of breathing side voice box. That is where the cancer is and gets removed. We fashioned the stoma, and the swallowing tube is what he would swallow down, and that had healed well, but because of the extent of Carl's cancer, he then needed further treatment, which is radiotherapy. And sometimes what that can do is cause a bit of extra scarring. And in Carl's case, it scarred so much that it actually narrowed his ability to swallow, that he could get nothing down at all. Unfortunately, around the time of the surgery, he'd had a tube placed into his tummy to kind of help him with nutrition. But that's just no way of going about things, and I specifically remember him saying, you know, the voice, the appearance, all of that he would forego just to be able to swallow. And you can really resonate that in someone who's so young. With all the activities that he got into, all his festivals and his socialising and everything, that's what he wanted to do. So we knew in his case that we had to do something, and it was going to be as extreme as considering removing that segment that had been scarred and rebuilding it, and considering rebuilding that with a flap from the arm. So this is what we planned to do. And when we got in and planned this surgery, what we actually found was that the radiotherapy hadn't just caused scarring just on the inside, but all of the tissues in the neck were completely scarred. So we couldn't identify healthy tissue to graft onto. And we had to think on the spot. And I remember specifically, it was probably about 11 o'clock at night, and myself and Mr. Gahir were scratching our heads going, what we're going to do. You know, we've got the neck open there, and we just said we're going to just have to try and see if we can create a passage down, and that's what we did. And we created a passage and managed to get through, and then with the help of our colleagues here in gastro, they helped to stretch that up over a period of a few weeks to months, and we are where we are now, where he's actually managed to get his swallowing back to normal. Fortunately, actually without the need for the graft and another big operation, which I think functionally would have set him back anyway. So he's in a much better position than what we planned to do with a big operation, which is great.
So leading up to it, Mr. George had put me in contact with somebody that had the surgery. I'd met them. And I'd done some research of my own, and I had on my phone I could type through. And I got used to using that before the surgery. So I did my best to prepare that I wouldn't be able to communicate normally, like when I woke up. So my first response was to grab something to communicate. And one of the amazing things they do is literally as simple as having a whiteboard and a pen there. Waking up and know, being able to do this literally in sight. That's there. That's reassuring. But my first response was reach for my phone, which wasn't there. It'd been left in my bag, which made me panic a bit, but only briefly. It came really natural though. I was really shocked how naturally the breathing came, because obviously it's a completely different way of breathing, but with all of the panic of looking at the phone and communicating nurses and stuff, I didn't even think, there was no conscious, on my breathing, it just happened, and it's kind of mind-blowing.
The challenge is, at the time, tough. But actually, in retrospect, you learn something from all of these. These are things that will encounter narrowing of the gullet after radiotherapy, and in most cases we can stretch them up. In Carl's case, we just couldn't do that in the standard way. So yeah, thinking on the spot and thinking of these ideas and making sure we kept him safe. I remember speaking to his mum at the time and just saying, look, we're going to try this. We don't know if it's going to work. And you are nervous about it, but it's the safest and best thing you can do at that time. And then in retrospect, when the results are good, it's fantastic, and that's what you learn from, and that's what you can then use that for the benefits of other patients in the future if that kind of thing happens. So that's the great thing about the job, is that in the vast majority of cases we're dealing with things that we've done before, but you get the small percentage where you're dealing with patients who you just wouldn't normally deal with a problem that you haven't normally seen, and your plan A is out the window and your plan B is out the window, and you have to kind of think of your plan C on the spot. But that's why we love it.
There's no kind of words to put into kind of play that kind of show my gratitude towards what they've done for him. Like, the level of care, the quality of care that they've given him has just been exceptional. Like, from the initial appointments to the care that he had whilst he was on the wards, because it wasn't just 1 or 2 times, like we've been various times, and he's been admitted for other things into the ENT kind of ward. I just think it really kind of puts things into perspective for you, that I don't really know how to word it, but it's just incredible. I just think the work that they do, they're so passionate about it, they're so, yeah, just the level of care is exceptional. And I just think, Kyle, we're really, really grateful and thankful that the technology was about that diagnosed him. We're really grateful for it being Mr. George and all of the specialist nurses. We could ring them in the middle of the night if we needed to. We had people coming out to the house to support him. Like, all these things that you just don't think about. And even having that background, like, you just don't realise how much of a change it's going to cause for not just Kyle, but the whole family. Like, I think, yeah, it's just exceptional what they've done for him.
I don't think I've stopped praising, like, the nurses and Mr. George and everybody, to anybody I've met since. I've struggled with talking and stuff like that, but I've not. I've not let that stop me. One of the things I said during the whole process, including the scarring and the second surgery, was just get me to this festival. Like, just before the radio and chemo was first planned, I was going to go to a festival. Well, I went to the festival, and then I was going to start the radio and chemo. Then I went to the festival and had the surgery. And during the rest of that year, I was just like, get me to that festival again next year, because they go every year. And then when I was there, and just because I was there and I had my friends, and like, it wasn't just me, it was all of them as well. We were all just able to relax. I don't even want to say relieved, because I don't think I was that stressed or anything. We were just able to relax. And just being able to do that was just, it was the best.
They gave Kyle a choice, so obviously the first surgery was kind of life or death. He had to have the surgery. That was kind of inevitable. But the second surgery, Kyle's already mentioned, was a lot more risky. There was a lot to it, but it was more so for quality of life. Kyle obviously took the risk. It came with a very big risk next to it, and the fact that Mr. George on both times rang my mum and me early hours in the morning to speak to us regarding. So the first surgery, he rang us and said everything had gone fine as expected. The second surgery, he rang us and he said, look, this is what's happened. We're not able to get a viable graft, a viable vein for the graft. Do you think that we should continue, or do you think we should stop and Kyle will have to live the rest of his life living out of a tube? Me and Mum knew that that wasn't what Kyle wanted, and my mum's words were, Kyle trusts you, he believes in you, you make that decision. Kyle will be thankful for whatever it is that you do. So the fact that that kind of puts into perspective the amount of trust and that we had in Mr. George, because I think that's really important. And obviously he did what he could, and now we're here and Kyle's able to eat, drink, talk and live a life that we didn't know he was going to be able to live.
I genuinely don't think I could actually say thank you enough. I really couldn't. But what I could do is support in any way I can. So I'm going to do the skydive, I'm going to raise money to fund whatever they need. So if it's a new scope which help diagnose me, or if it's just a small whiteboard for somebody to talk to, or even a taxi to get somebody to come meet somebody before they go through the process again, like they did with me, anything to give that little bit of support and help the patients that they help, because they already do such a wonderful job. Being able to support that is what I want to do.
What we want to try and push is this external camera side of things, which is this Eagle and exoscope, and that for us is basically it's a super magnified, high definition view of the operation. Because what I'd probably play it on the fact is the camera obviously you can use to operate with, but you can use it to record these kind of events which are rare, right? I mean, we've not been in a situation before. But what you'd like to be able to do is kind of create a learning archive of this kind of stuff, and that's what this camera is for, as well as for operating with. You can archive it, record it.
We are giving back in probably the most unique way. I have always wanted to do a skydive, and what better way to do so by raising some money to help the people that have helped us and helped Kyle. I think it's really important to do it.
I mean, look, the best thing ever is seeing people return back to what they do. That is as any surgeon will probably say, is you see patients who have this problem, and it's not just getting them through their treatment, it's getting them back to pretty much where they are. And there's so many things he was doing at that young age with his festivals and his music and his gaming, and that's what I love to talk to him about and see that passion and enthusiasm back in him again. So that is it's a super feeling, and that's the one thing that the driver to keep you doing what you're doing. Never seen a patient come sit down and say, I want to jump out of a plane following a laryngectomy. Knowing Carl, that doesn't surprise me, because I think he's a bit of a daredevil and a bit of an adrenaline junkie, and but that's great. That's what he wants to do, and I know with Hollie, she was always planning to do that anyway, so it's just giving them both an excuse to get it done. It was a challenge in another way then, because it was contacting the British Skydiving Association, speaking to their medics. It turns out that actually there are some individuals who have done it before, so at least we knew there was some safety aspects of it that had been considered. And actually we used some of our other patients who've been in similar situations where the tracheostomy could be exposed to high gusts of wind, etc., and they gave us some tips on how to protect. So it's taken a while, and in fairness to Carl and Hollie, they were persistent because I was unsure as to whether or not it was sensible. But I think we've got to a point now where he's at 2 years, he's doing really well. He clearly wants to do this, and I think we've got to help support him and make it happen. So that's what we're going to do.
I was excited before I booked it. No, I am looking forward to it. It's a bit nerve-wracking, obviously. I think that's normal. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's pretty normal to be nervous. Don't ask me on the day. No, I'm looking forward to it. Terrified and excited, I think is the best way to put it.
The charity enables us to do things that are different, that are innovative, that we wouldn't normally do in our kind of day-to-day practice. It allows us to think a little bit out of the box. On this particular occasion, what we'd really love to do is get an exoscope, which is a high-definition external camera that allows us to record surgical events, something like this with Carl's case, whereby we've seen a procedure and an operation in a situation that we wouldn't come across that frequently. So to be able to capture it and archive that procedure and then use that for teaching and education, because all of this is learning experience. So we'd really love to be able to raise more funds to be able to support us purchasing that particular bit of equipment. That would be excellent. It's not something that we do normally, it's certainly novel, but I think it's really going to benefit patients in the future.
Equipment provided by UHNM Charity helped save my brother's life. Please help raise funds today.